The Caravan of Ibn Fadlan audiobook. Translated and presented by Daman Baroba. Ibn Fadlan's journey to the Saqaliba, the Volga Bulgars. When we were a day and a night's journey from the king of the Saqaliba, the one to whom we were headed, he sent to meet us the 4 kings who were under him, as well as his brothers and his sons. They met us, bringing with them bread, meat, and millet, and they accompanied us. When we were 2 farsakhs away from him, he met us himself. When he saw us, he dismounted and fell prostrate, giving thanks to Allah the Mighty and Exalted. He had dirhams in his sleeve and scattered them over us. He pitched domes for us, and we lodged in them. We arrived at his camp on Sunday when 12 nights had passed of the month of Muharram in the year 310, May 12, 922. The distance from Jurjaniya to his town was 70 days. We remained on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in the domes that had been pitched for us until the king gathered the kings, the commanders, and the people of his country to hear the reading of the letter. When Thursday came and they had assembled, we unfurled the 2 black banners which were with us, saddled the horse that was with us, caparisoned it with a black saddlecloth, and turbaned it. I brought out the letter of the caliph and said to him, "It is not permissible for us to remain seated while his letter is being read." So he and all the chieftains of his kingdom who were present stood up. The king himself was corpulent and large-bellied. I began reading the address of the letter, and when I reached the words, "Peace be upon you, I praise Allah on your behalf. There is no God but He," I said to him, "Return the greeting to the commander of the faithful." So he returned the greeting, and they all returned it together. The interpreter continued translating for us word by word. When we finished reading it, they shouted Allahu Akbar in a great voice that made the earth tremble. Then I read the letter of the vizier Ahmad ibn al-Abbas while he remained standing. Then I ordered him to sit, and he sat down while I read the letter of Nadhir al-Harami. When I had finished it, his companions scattered many dirhams over him. Then I brought out the gifts, the perfumes, the garments, and the pearls for him and for his wife. I continued presenting them one by one until I finished. Then I clothed his wife in the robe of honor in the presence of the people while she sat beside him, for that is their custom and practice. When I clothed her in it, the women scattered dirhams over her, and then we left. An hour later he sent for us, and we went to him. He was in his dome. The kings were on his right, and he ordered us to sit on his left. His sons were seated before him. He was alone upon a couch covered with Byzantine brocade. He called for the food table, and it was brought. Upon it was only roasted meat. He began. He took a knife, cut off a morsel, and ate it, then a second and a third. Then he cut off a piece and gave it to Sasan the envoy. When he had eaten it, a small table was brought to him and placed before him. That is their custom. No one stretches out his hand to eat until the king gives him a morsel. As soon as he eats it, a table is brought for him. Then he handed a morsel to me, and a table was brought for me. Then he cut off a piece and gave it to the king on his right, and a table was brought for him. Then he handed morsels to his sons, and their tables were brought to them. Each one of us ate from his own table, with no one sharing it with him, and no one taking anything from another's table. When we finished eating, each of us took what remained on his table back to his lodging. When we had eaten, he called for honey mead to be drunk. They call it suju. He drank a cup, then stood up and said, This is my toast to my master, the commander of the faithful. May Allah prolong his life. When the 4 kings and his sons saw him stand, they stood, and we stood with them. He did that 3 times, then we departed from him. A katib was delivering the khutbah for him on the minbar before I arrived, saying, "O Allah, give guidance to King Yiltawar, king of the Bulgars." So I said to him, "Allah is the king. No one should be called king on the minbar except him, the exalted. That is what your master, the commander of the faithful, has approved should be set upon his pulpits in the east and the west. O Allah, give guidance to your servant and your successor, Ja'far the Imam, al-Muqtadir Billah, commander of the faithful." And also what the Prophet, may Allah's prayers and peace be upon him, said, "Do not extol me as the Christians extolled Isa son of Maryam, for I am but a servant. So say, the servant of Allah and his messenger." He said to me, "How then should the khutbah be said for me?" I said, "In your name and your father's name." He said, "My father was an infidel, and I do not like his name to be mentioned on the minbar, and I myself do not like my name to be mentioned either, for the one who gave me that name was an infidel. But what is the name of my master, the commander of the faithful?" I said, "Ja'far." He said, "Is it permissible for me to take that as my name?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I have taken the name Ja'far, and for my father the name Abdullah. So instruct the katib to do that." So the katib came forward and delivered the khutbah for him, saying, "O Allah, give guidance to your servant Ja'far ibn Abdullah, prince of the Bulgars, client of the commander of the faithful." 3 days after the reading of the letter and the delivery of the gifts, he sent for me, for he had learned of the matter of the 4,000 dinars and the trick of the Christian to delay it, the news of which was in Nadhir's letter. When I entered, he ordered me to sit, so I sat. He threw the letter of the commander of the faithful at me and said, "Who brought this letter?" I said, "I did." Then he threw the letter of the vizier at me and said, "And who brought this one too?" I said, "I did." He said, "And what was done with the money that was mentioned in it, which was to be sent with you?" I said, "It was not possible to collect it. Time was short, and we feared we would miss the caravan, so we left it so that it could follow us later." He said, "And yet all of you have come. My master spent what he spent on you to bring this money to me, so that I might build a fortress with it to protect me from the Jews who have enslaved me. As for the gift, my own servant could have brought it." I said, "That is so, but we strove hard in the matter." The interpreter said to me, "Say to him, I do not know these people. I only know you. And that is because these people are non-Arabs. If our master, may Allah support him, knew that they would do what you have done, he would not have sent you, so that you would withhold my money, read my letter to me, and hear my reply, and I would not demand a dirham from anyone else but you. So it would be better for you to produce the money." So I left his presence, terrified and distressed. He was a man of majestic bearing, corpulent and broad, as though he were speaking from the bottom of a barrel. So I went out from him and gathered my companions and told them what had passed between me and him. And I said to them, "This is what I had warned you about." Now his muezzin used to double the iqama when he called to prayer. So I said to him, "Your master, the commander of the faithful, makes the iqama but once." So he said to the muezzin, "Do what he tells you and do not oppose him." The muezzin then kept coming to me for days, disputing with me about the money and arguing with me over it, while I placated him to make him get over it. When he despaired of getting it, he went to the muezzin and ordered him to double the iqama. So he did, intending this as a way to pick a quarrel with me. When I heard him double the iqama, I forbade him and shouted at him. The king learned of that, so he summoned me and my companions. When we were assembled, he said to the interpreter, "Say to him," meaning me, "what does he say about two muezzins, one of whom says the iqama once and the other says it twice, and each leads a group of people in prayer? Is their prayer valid or not?" I said, "Their prayer is valid." He said, "With difference of opinion or with unanimity?" I said, "With unanimity among the jurists." He said, "Say to him, what does he say about a man who gives money to a people who are weak, besieged, and enslaved, and they betray him?" I said, "This is not permissible, and they are evil people who do that." He said, "With difference of opinion or with unanimity?" I said, "With unanimity." He said to the translator, "Say to him, do you know that if the caliph, may Allah prolong his life, had sent an army against me, he could have overcome me?" I said, "No." He said, "And the prince of Khorasan?" I said, "No." He said, "Is it not because of the distance and the multitude of infidel tribes between us?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Say to him, by Allah, I am in my remote place where you see me, yet I fear my master the commander of the faithful. And that is because I fear that news that he dislikes about me might reach him and he might curse me, and I would perish in my place while he remains in his kingdom, with vast lands between us. And you eat his bread and wear his clothes and see him all the time, and you betray him with the money of a people who are weak, whose religion is weak, who are slaves, and who were called to Islam, yet you betray them. If the first argument were allowed against you, the second argument would be allowed against you too. And yet you have eaten his bread and worn his clothes and have been with him all the time. And you have betrayed him in the matter of the letter he sent to me and to a weak people, and you have betrayed the Muslims. I shall accept nothing from you until there comes to me someone who will advise me about what he says. If a man comes to me in such a manner, I shall accept it from him." So he silenced us, and we left him. He said, after he finished his speech, he favored me, brought me closer to him, drew my companions aside, and called me Abu Bakr al-Siddiq. And I saw many wonders in his country that I cannot count. On the first night we spent in his country, I saw at the hour just before sunset the horizon of the sky turn intensely red. I heard in the air loud noises and a loud humming. So I raised my head and saw a cloud red as fire close to me, and those hums and sounds came from it. And it were figures like men and horses, and figures that looked like men, and in their hands were spears and swords which I could make out and imagine. And there was another patch like it, in which I also saw men, horses, and weapons. Then one patch advanced against the other as one battalion charges another. So we were terrified by this and began to pray and supplicate, while the Bulgars laughed at us and were astonished at our actions. He said, "We kept looking at the two patches attacking each other, and they would all mingle together in battle for a while and then separate. The matter continued thus for a part of the night, then they disappeared. So we asked the king about it, and he claimed that his ancestors used to say that these are among the believers and unbelievers of the jinn, who fight each other every evening, and that they have never ceased doing so every night since they have existed. He said, I and a tailor who belonged to the king, from among the people of Baghdad, were talking for some time while we waited for the Isha call to prayer until we heard the adhan. So we came out of the dome, and dawn had already broken. I said to the muezzin, what adhan was that you gave? He said, the adhan of Far. I said, and what of Isha? He said, we pray it together with Maghrib. I said, and the night? He said, just as you see. Then I saw that the sun would set at the hour of Asr and would not disappear, so that the twilight would be connected to the dawn, and the night was less than an hour long. Then the king said that for a month before that and a month after, the night becomes short and the day long. And he said that the night had been shorter than that, but was now growing longer. He mentioned that he had not slept for a month for fear of missing the Far prayer. For a man puts the pot on the fire at sunset. Then he prays Far, and the pot still has not come to a boil. He said, I saw that their day was very long. At that season it continues to lengthen and the night to shorten. Then the night grows longer and the day shorter. When the second night came, I sat outside the dome and watched the sky, and I did not see in it more than a few stars, perhaps 15 stars. And the red glow of the twilight before sunset never disappears, and the night is not very dark, so that a man can recognize another man at night from more than an arrow shot away. He said, I saw that the moon does not reach the middle of the sky, but rather skirts the horizon for an hour. Then dawn breaks and the moon sets. The king told me that beyond his country, at a distance of 3 months' journey, there is a people called Wisu, whose night is less than an hour. He said, I saw in their country that when the sun rises, everything in it turns red, the land, the mountains, and everything that a man looks at. When the sun rises, it is as though it were a great cloud, and the redness remains until it reaches the middle of the sky. The people of the country told me that when winter comes, the night becomes as long as the day was, and the day becomes as short as the night was, to the point that if a man of us goes out at dawn to the river called the Athil, between us and the river being less than a farsakh, he does not reach it until nightfall, with all the stars covering the sky. And we did not leave the country until the night had grown long and the day had grown short. And I saw them seeking a good omen from the howling of dogs, rejoicing at it, and saying, This will be a year of fertility, blessing, and safety. And I saw snakes there in such numbers that a branch of a tree might have 10 or more coiled around it. And they do not kill them, nor do they harm them. Indeed, I saw in one place a tall tree, more than 100 cubits high, that had fallen, its trunk very great. I stood looking at it when it moved, and that terrified me. I looked closely, and there upon it was a snake nearly as thick and as long as the tree itself. When it saw me, it left the trunk and disappeared among the trees. So I came back afraid, and I told the king and those who were in his council, but they paid no attention to it. He said, Do not be alarmed, it will not harm you. We stayed with the king for a while. Then I and my companions, Takin, Sasan, and Baris, and a man from among the king's companions, went out among the trees, and we saw a small green stalk, as thin as a spindle but longer, with a green shoot upon it, and on top of the shoot a broad leaf spread out upon the ground like a dish, and within it were seeds. Whoever eats it would never doubt that it is pomegranate seeds. So we ate from it, and it was most delicious, and we continued to go about and eat from it. I saw they have apples that are very green and very sour, more sour than vinegar, which the young girls eat and become fat from. I saw in their country many hazelnut trees, and I saw beehives in the forests, each beehive 40 farsakhs in extent. And I saw in their country a tree that I did not know what it was, very tall, its trunk free of leaves, its crown like the crown of a palm, with slender fronds. Yet they were clustered together. The people go to a place they know on its trunk and bore a hole in it, and place a vessel beneath it, and sap flows into it from that hole, sweeter than honey. And if a man drinks much of it, it intoxicates him as wine does. Most of their food is millet and horse meat, though wheat and barley are plentiful in their land. Whoever sows anything takes it for himself. The king has no right to it except that they give him a sable skin each year from every household. If he orders a raiding party to attack some country, and it takes booty, he has a share along with them. Whoever holds a wedding feast or invites people must serve honey mead and pour wheat bread, because their land is black and stinking. They have no storehouses in which to keep their food. Instead, they dig pits in the ground and place their food in them. After only a few days it spoils, stinks, and becomes useless. They have no olive oil, no sesame oil, no fat at all. They use fish oil in place of these oils, so everything they use is greasy. They make a barley porridge for the slave girls and boys. Sometimes they cook barley with meat, so they serve meat to the masters and barley to the slave girls. They all wear kalansua caps. When the king rides out, he rides alone, with no groom and no one with him. When he passes through the market, everyone stands, takes his cap from his head, and places it under his armpit. When he has passed them, they put their caps back on. Likewise, everyone who comes into the presence of the king, young and old, even his sons and brothers, must take his cap and put it under his armpit, bow his head to him, sit, then stand until he gives him permission to sit. And everyone who sits before him sits kneeling and does not remove his cap or show it until he leaves the king's presence. Then he puts it back on. They all live in domes, except that the king's dome is very large, able to hold 1,000 people and more, and is furnished with Armenian carpets, and in its center there is a throne covered with Byzantine brocade. One of their customs is that when a child is born to a man, his grandfather takes him in preference to his father and says, "I have more right to raise him than his father until he becomes a man." And if a man among them dies, his brother inherits from him to the exclusion of his son. So I informed the king that this is not permissible, and I explained to him what the law of inheritance is according to Islam until he understood it. There are many thunderbolts in their country, and if a thunderbolt strikes a house, they do not go near it, and they leave it as it is with all that is in it, men, property, and all else, until time destroys it. And they say, "This house is accursed." If a man among them kills another intentionally, they execute him in retaliation. If he kills him accidentally, they make a box of birch wood, place him inside it, nail it shut, place 3 loaves of bread and a jug of water with him, set up 3 pieces of wood like tent poles, and suspend him between them, and say, "We have placed him between heaven and earth, exposed to rain and sun. Perhaps God will have mercy on him." and he remains suspended until time wears him away and the winds scatter him. If they see a man who is clever and knowledgeable, they say, "This man is more worthy to serve our Lord." So they take him, put a rope round his neck, and hang him from a tree until he falls to pieces. The king's interpreter told me that a man from Al-Sind had come to that country and stayed with the king for a period, serving him. He was quick-witted and intelligent. A group of them wanted to go out on a trading expedition on their own. So the Sindhi asked the king for permission to go out with them, and he forbade him. But the Sindhi insisted until he gave him leave, so he went out with them on a boat. They found that man to be clever, so they conspired among themselves and said, "This man is fit to serve our Lord, so let us offer him to him." On their way they put in at some place, so they took the man from the boat onto land, put a rope round his neck, tied it to the top of a tall tree, left him there, and went on. If they are traveling on the road, and one of them wants to urinate and does so with his weapons still on him, they go up to him and strip him of his weapons, his clothes, and all he has with him. This is their custom. But if one takes his weapons off and puts them aside, then urinates, they do nothing to him. Their men and women go down to the river together and bathe together naked, one in sight of the other, yet they do not commit adultery for any reason whatsoever. Whoever among them commits adultery, they set up 4 stakes, tie his hands and feet to them, and cut him with an axe from his neck to his thighs. They do the same to the woman. Then each piece of him and her is hung upon a tree. I tried hard to make their women cover themselves from the men when bathing, but I could not succeed. And these people kill the thief just as they kill the adulterer. In their forests there is much honey in the hives of wild bees, which they know and go out to seek. Sometimes their enemies attack them and kill them. Among them are many merchants who go to the land of the Turks and bring back sheep, and to a country called Wisu where they bring sable and black fox furs. We found among them a clan of 5,000 men and women who had all become Muslims, known as the Baranjar. They had built for themselves a mosque of wood in which they prayed, but they did not know how to recite the Quran. So I taught a group of them how to pray. A man called Talat became a Muslim at my hands, so I named him Abdullah. He said, "I want you to name me after yourself, Muhammad." So I did. His wife, his mother, and his children also became Muslims, so they were all named Muhammad. I taught him Surat Alhamdulillah, Al-Fatiha, and Kul Huwa Allahu Ahad al-Ikhlas. His joy at these 2 surahs was greater than if he had become king of the Saqaliba. When we reached the king, we found him at a place called Kalja, which has 3 lakes, 2 large and 1 small. Yet none of them has a source of fresh water. Between this place and a great river of theirs which flows into the land of the Khazars, called the River Athil, there is about a farsakh. This river is the site of a market held every year where many valuable goods are sold. Takin had told me that in the king's country there was a man of very great stature. When I arrived in the country, I asked the king about him. He said, "Yes, he was in our country and he has died. He was not from the town nor from among the people." His story was that a band of merchants went out to the river Athil. It is a river we go a day's journey to reach, and this river had risen and its waters had flooded. One day a band of merchants came to me and said, "O king, a man has appeared on the river. If he is from a nation close to us, then there is no staying for us in this land, and we have no choice but to move away." So I rode with them to the river until we reached it. And I saw a man whose height was 12 cubits by my own cubit. His head was like a great cauldron, his nose more than a span, his eyes huge, and his fingers each more than a span. His appearance terrified us, and we were afraid of him. We spoke to him, but he did not speak to us. He only stared at us. So I carried him off to my place, and I wrote to the people of Wisu, who are 3 months' journey from us, asking them about him. They wrote back to me informing me that this man is from among Gog and Magog, who are 3 months' journey from them, and between us and them is the sea. They are on the shore of the sea. They are naked. They have intercourse like beasts, and every day God the Exalted brings forth a fish from the sea for them. Each one of them comes with a knife and cuts from it as much as suffices him and his family. If he takes more than what suffices him, his belly aches, and his family's bellies ache too, and perhaps they all die. So when they have taken what they need from it, it turns over and falls back into the sea, and they do the same every day. And between us and them the sea lies on one side, and mountains encircle them on the other. The wall, built by Du al-Qarnayn, also blocks them from the gate by which they used to come out. So when God the Exalted wills to release them into the inhabited world, he will cause the wall to open, the sea to dry up, and the fish to be withheld from them. He said, so I asked him about the man, and he said, he stayed with me for a while. Every boy who looked at him died. Every pregnant woman who looked at him miscarried. And if he seized a man, he would squeeze him in his hands until he killed him. When I saw what he was doing, I hanged him from a tall tree until he died. If you wish to look at his bones and his head, I will go with you to see them. I said, by Allah, I would love to do that. So he rode with me to a vast forest with great tall trees, and he led me to the tree beneath which were the man's bones and his head. I saw his head. It was like a great beehive, and his ribs were each like the branches of a palm tree, as were the bones of his arms and legs. So I marveled at him and left. He said, the king moved from the lakes called Kalja to a river called Jashir, where he stayed for 2 months. Then he wished to move on. So he sent to a people called Sawaz, ordering them to move with him. But they refused and split into 2 groups. One group was with a chief called, and he ruled over them, and his name was Y. So the king sent to them and said, Allah the Exalted has bestowed upon me Islam and the dominion of the commander of the faithful. I am his slave, and this people has appointed me over them. Whoever opposes me, I shall meet with the sword. The other group was with a king from among the tribal kings, known as the king of Askal, who was obedient to the king of the Bulgars, except that he had not embraced Islam. When the king sent this message to them, they feared him and all departed with him to the river Jashir. It is a small river, its width 5 cubits, its water reaching to the navel, sometimes to the collarbone, and around it are many trees and thickets. Near this river there is a wide desert in which, they say, there is an animal smaller than a camel, but bigger than a bull. Its head is like a camel's head, its tail like a bull's tail, its body like a mule's body, its hooves like a bull's hooves. It has in the middle of its head a single, thick, round horn which grows thinner as it rises, until at the top it is like a spear point. Some of these horns are 3 to 5 cubits long, more or less. It feeds on the leaves of trees. When this animal sees a horseman, it makes for him, and if the horse is swift it escapes with effort. If it catches up with him, it takes him off the back of his horse with its horn, tosses him into the air, and catches him on its horn, and continues thus until it kills him. It does not harm the horse in any way. The people seek it in the desert and the woods until they kill it. They climb the tall trees to watch for it, and a number of archers with poisoned arrows gather for this purpose, and when it comes into their midst they shoot at it until it is dead. I saw in the king's possession 3 bowls like Yemeni onyx. I knew that they were made from the horn of this animal, and some of the people of the country told me that it is the rhinoceros. He said, I saw that many of them were sick, and most of them die of colic, even their infants. And if a Muslim dies among them, or the husband of a Khwarezmian woman, they wash him as Muslims do, then carry him on a cart that drags him, with a banner in front of him, until they come to the place where they will bury him. When they reach it, they take him from the cart and place him on the ground, then draw a line around him, then dig his grave within that line and bury him. This is what they do with their dead. Women do not wail over the dead, rather their men do. They come on the day he died, stand at the door of his tent, and weep with the ugliest, most desolate wailing possible. That is for the freemen. When their wailing is finished, the slaves come with braided thongs and begin to weep, beating their sides and every exposed part of their bodies with those thongs until their bodies are scored as if beaten with a whip. Then they set up a banner at the door of his tent, bring his weapons, and place them around his grave, and do not cease weeping for 2 years. When the 2 years have passed, they take down the banner, cut off some of their hair, and invite the relatives of the deceased with a feast, by which it is known that they have come out of mourning. If the dead man has a wife, and he is one of the chiefs, his wife becomes free. As for the common people, they do some of this for their dead. The king of the Saqaliba must pay tribute to the king of the Khazars, a sable skin from every household in his kingdom. If a ship comes from the land of the Khazars to the land of the Saqaliba, the king boards it, counts what is in it, and takes 1/10 of all of it. If the Rus or other peoples come with slaves, the king has the right to take 1 slave from every 10. The son of the king of the Saqaliba was a hostage with the king of the Khazars. The king of the Khazars had contacted the king of the Saqaliba about his daughter and asked for her hand, but he refused him. So he took her by force. He was a Jew and she was a Muslimah, and she died in his custody. Then he demanded another daughter of his. At that point the king of the Saqaliba, knowing the Jews' intent, hastened to marry his daughter to the king of Askel for fear he would take her by force as he had done to her sister. So the king of the Saqaliba wrote to the sultan asking him to build him a fortress to protect him from the king of the Khazars. He said, "One day I asked him and said to him, 'Your kingdom is vast, your wealth abundant, your tribute large, so why did you ask the sultan to build a fortress for you from his own money?' He said, 'I thought that the abode of Islam is blessed, and that wealth taken from it is blessed, so I sought that for this reason. If I had wanted to build a fortress with my own money, from silver or gold, it would not have been impossible for me to do so. I sought the blessing of the money of the commander of the faithful, so I asked him for it.